Thank you. So welcome to the Town of Vesuvius regular open meeting of council, April 23rd, 2024 at 2 p.m. in council chambers. And I first of all would like to say happy birthday to Councillor King. It's his birthday today, so we hope you have a good day. Approval of the agenda and any late items. Mrs. Robinson?
There is none.
Thank you. Could we have approval of the regular open meeting as presented? Councillor King, Councillor Chong, all in favor. Thank you. And the adoption of some minutes, the regular open minutes from April the 9th, 2024. We have a motion to accept those. Councillor Bennett, Councillor Poderica, all in favor. Thank you. We'll go down to water matters. That the reported expenditures from account payable for water district information be received for information, and that would be as of April the 23rd. The expenditures for water districts 8 and 9 are in the amount of $12,057.12. Good. Thank you. Councillor Moreras moving that. Seconder, Councillor King. All in favor. Thank you. And next is the request to exclude lands from the agricultural land reserve at 4704 Main Street. And we'll ask planner Shannon Wong to talk to this. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. So as mentioned, this is file number A2401, which is a request to exclude lands from the agricultural land reserve. Just as a bit of context, with regards to the legislative framework around the exclusion applications within the agricultural land reserve. As some of you might know, amendments were made in 2019 to the Agricultural Land Commission Act. And that included a number of pretty large scale amendments, particularly in regards to the exclusion application process. One of the most significant of which removed the ability of private property owners to be able to apply for the exclusion of privately owned lands within the Agricultural Land Reserve or ALR. That being said, the Act does stipulate that various government bodies, so inclusive of local governments, First Nations governments, provincial federal government, as well as prescribed public bodies, would retain the ability to apply for the exclusion of lands within their jurisdiction. And this isn't only in regards to lands they own, this is in regards to lands that are privately owned within that government's jurisdiction. So in this way, a local government could apply to the Agricultural Land Commission to effectively on behalf of a private property owner to exclude lands from the reserve. Hoping that that's finicky today. So with this in mind, the property owner of the parcel at 4704 Main Street or Highway 3 has requested that the town initiate an exclusion application to remove their property from the ALR. The OCP designation which applies to the property is agriculture, and the corresponding zoning is agricultural. Just a bit of context with respect to this property, the current boundaries of the parcel were a result of a previous home site severance, which was approved by the commission back in the 90s, or the 80s actually. In looking into the ALC application history, there have been a couple of exclusion applications which were previously submitted both by the former property owner and the current property owner, which had been refused, the latest of which was roughly 20 years ago. The parcel is understood to have not been used for farm purposes since the time in which the property owner had subdivided the property to create this home site lot. And of note, this parcel is connected to municipal water and sewer servicing. So the applicant has requested that the town initiate this application as a means of developing the property for multi-family residential use. And it should be noted that the applicant has put forward a tentative proposal if the application is successful as a means of facilitating the multi-family residential development on the site to amend the OCP designation of the property from agriculture to medium or low medium density residential or to another similar designation, and also request inclusion within the town's growth containment area as outlined in the OCP bylaw, as well as to amend the zoning from agricultural to low density residential or another similar zoning. Now, some considerations that were made when reviewing this particular proposal, we noted several key factors with respect to the application or the request, namely that the parcel itself is isolated from the agricultural land reserve, both physically and administratively. And by this, I mean that there are non-ALR lands to the west, and the Essegas Indian Band reserve lands are located to the north and the east of the property, and because those are under federal jurisdiction, they are not subject to the Agricultural Land Commission Act or its regulations. Additionally, where there is a contiguous block of agricultural land, this is actually south of the property across from Highway 3. So this parcel is separated from the rest of the agricultural land reserve really by highway. Another thing that we noted was that the property is fairly small in size, which does limit its agricultural viability as its own independent farm parcel, or potentially to include it into an agricultural operation that is larger in scale. We did also note that the parcel is in close proximity to an existing flat stop, which is located at Cottonwood and Maine, and also in close proximity to both existing and proposed trails. So really considering this all together, we do believe that the site and location kind of characteristics of this particular parcel do give merit to its potential use into the future as a expanded residential development, whether that be in the form of a multi-family dwelling or small scale multi-unit housing. However, the official community plan bylaw does generally speak to supporting the preservation and farm use of agricultural lands within the town's boundaries, and specifically outlines cases where exclusion applications are more likely to be supported by council. These criteria being that it is in regards to a transportation connection that is required, or particularly for parcels which are less than 8.8 hectares in size, which have been used for non-farm use and were individually titled on or prior to December 21st, 1972. So we do note that this particular proposal is not consistent with either of those criteria. And in that regard, the proposal is not consistent with the agriculture OCP designation of the property, and it is contemplating uses which aren't permitted under the current agriculture zoning of the property. So council is being asked today to consider the following options and provide further direction on this. Firstly, to either to make the application or initiate the application to the Agricultural Land Commission and to direct staff to initiate all the public consultation requirements that are required within the Agricultural Land Commission Act and Local Government Act to initiate that, or to deny the request. And in consideration of the comments that were previously provided, administration is recommending that option 1 to proceed be taken. And I'd have to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Councillor King?
Yeah, thank you, Member. Just a question, in the past, is it the owner of the property that sends it forward to the LR or her staff?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so previously, a private property owner was able to apply directly to the Agricultural Land Commission for exclusion. What happens with similar to other ALC applications is that they type everything into the portal, hit submit, and it gets sent to the local government for consideration. And the local government would then have to decide whether or not to allow it to proceed to the commission. So that's no longer the case, and they actually have to come to council now first to ask council to make the application on their behalf.
Can I ask, it says that a public hearing would be scheduled. Now, for this particular exclusion, a public hearing would be done before or when the ALC comes back with an answer?
So a public hearing would have to happen prior to submitting the actual application to the commission. So if council were to move forward with the administrative recommendation, we would hold the public hearing. I believe it's 2 council meetings from now. We would collect feedback through that process and then come back to council at a future meeting and ask at that point for further direction based on the feedback that can be received.
So it does not get sent to the ALC until these steps are taken.
That's correct.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move option 1.
Thank you. Who's seconding that? Are there any other questions or concerns? All right, so I will call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. That's carried. Okay, next is the development variance permit application number DVP 24-01. Thank you, Ms. Wong.
Great, thank you. So moving right into this one. This particular development variance application, development variance permit application relates to the property at 6828 89th Street, which is located just across the street from the elementary school, kind of sandwiched in between Nighthawk Drive and 89th Street. The applicable official community plan designation is comprehensive development with a corresponding zoning of comprehensive development, more specifically the CB12 zone. The parcel is just under 2,900 square meters in size, and under the town's official community plan bylaw, this parcel is located within the growth containment area. Now, the specific proposal that is being considered is to construct a 40-unit multiple family dwelling, which is an apartment building, which is, I understand, based on the applicant's submission, intended to be a rental unit. So with respect to the comprehensive development CB12 zone and its regulations, the zoning permits multifamily dwelling as a permitted use to a maximum of 40 units. The zoning also stipulates a maximum building height of 13 meters. And in reviewing the applicant's building plans, it appears that the building height, which is measured from average grade up to the highest point of the roof, is 15.8 meters. So in order to move forward with the proposal as presented, the applicant would need to obtain a development variance permit in order to increase the maximum height allowance from 13 meters to 15.8 meters. So in considering this particular application, it is noted that generally the purpose of regulating height through the use of the zoning bylaw has historically been to minimize impacts on neighboring properties as it relates to shading and privacy, as well as potential impacts on the established streetscape of the area. That being said, we do recognize that recent provincial direction has generally encouraged us to take a more flexible approach with respect to new housing developments and removing barriers to the provision of small-scale multi-unit housing. More specifically, the provincial policy and site standards manual with respect to the small scale and multi-unit housing speaks to factors that could negatively impact the creation of these types of homes. In particular, the manual points out concerns regarding evaluations against existing neighborhood character and height impacts on shading and privacy. And while the manual itself speaks specifically to small scale multi-unit housing, we do find that there is merit in expanding these types of principles to larger scale developments and allowing for more flexibility in housing forms that we're allowing. So we do recognize that the proposal does represent an approximately 22% increase to the current height allowance. And this is understood to accommodate as a means to accommodate vaulted ceilings with respect to the top units, as well as increased headspace throughout the various residential units. Additionally, the request is being made partly to allow for additional headroom on the parking level for the purposes of accommodating those van lift style accessible parking spaces. That being said, we We do note that the proposed variance is not being requested as a means of mitigating various physical or legal features which would otherwise restrict development of the site. But we do note that the proposed small scale multi-unit housing zoning updates, which were previously presented to council, that does include a maximum height allowance of 15 meters within the medium density residential zone. So the proposed variance would actually represent a somewhat smaller deviation with respect to the proposed future height allowance in that type of zone. We did also highlight that a majority of the parcels along 89th Street, located between 62nd and 74th Avenue, are already zoned for higher, high-density residential uses, or are potentially designated under the official community plan as medium high-density residential. So in this regard, the proposal does seem to be generally in keeping with the future land use direction that has already been put into place through bylaw. With this in mind, we do believe that the future streetscape impacts would likely be quite minimal as we see a future development on 89th Street. And lastly, we did want to comment on the Estes Fire Department and the comments that they have provided during the internal referral period, as they did note that the design of the development would challenge fire suppression efforts to the structures of the property, as that building is comprised of 5 stories. And that is seen to exceed current firefighting capabilities with their existing apparatus, and that an aerial apparatus would be required in order to ensure adequate fire access. And we do understand that this type of equipment is being proposed as part of the 2028 budget, and we are supportive of the inclusion of that in that budget. And I did want to flag as well, and you would see this in your agenda package, we did receive one representation in opposition of this particular proposal, just to make sure you're aware. So now council is being asked to consider the following options, either to approve the development variance permit application or to deny the application. In light of the comments that were previously made with respect to our assessment of the proposal, we are recommending option 1 in this case to approve the permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor King?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple of questions. We passed this development 2 years ago. How come you have a variance now that they can move forward and they never got a building permit within 2 years?
So my understanding is that an application has come in for a building permit. It can't move forward without the development variance permit, as is. I can't really speak to kind of their timing of moving forward with that building permit. There may have been just circumstances that I'm unaware of.
I have another question. I guess I have a little concern with the height. As the fire chief has mentioned, he couldn't put out a fire, and I don't want to sound negative, but to me, that's quite a concern. If this happened to go forward and get built within, say, the next 3 years, and we're looking at a possible budget with no guarantee that gets passed in 28. So is there an opportunity, maybe I could ask Mr. Reasoning, would we get sued if there was a fire and we don't have a ladder truck to put it out?
Your worship, I think in any situation, the municipality is always subject to litigation. That's why we have lawyers on speed dial for numerous functions, and a lot of municipalities have lawyers on staff. So that's always a risk. And I think it has more to do with the policies that are in play with regards to fire suppression efforts. And whether we're following those procedures.
Okay.
I guess I got one more question. You're looking for a height variance, and when you say 1.48 meters, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually 5 feet. So again, do you see any impact on the neighbors, like we talked about the shade and the different things? And you mentioned everything along there, it's like only 3 levels high on 89th, now you're talking 5. It seems quite excessive.
Go ahead, Shannon.
So I think I had mentioned, with the proposed changes to the height allowances within the medium density zones, certainly I think in the short term, it would present somewhat of a deviation from what currently exists, but as we're starting to seek additional development along 89 feet built out to what the zoning allows, it will very likely be much more minimal into the future.
Okay, thank you. I had a couple. The original plan was for 40 units. And this plan is for 40 units. In other words, the size of the apartments and so on has been maintained the same. However, it's 9 feet higher. I mean, yeah, 3 meters higher. I'm concerned, you said that there would be an increase in the height in the basement. Certainly, when this was originally done and we approved it, there must have been an appropriate height level in the basement, and you said that that might be increased in some of the other areas. Would it not have met those qualifications the first time when we approved it?
I suppose it's a bit difficult to say because I don't know what plans exactly were provided to the town and the council at the time when they were originally considering the rezoning of the property. So I'm not sure if there's actually been a change in the plans or if these are new to us.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'm sure there was one because actually they were given the go-ahead and the permit has lapsed. So it must have met the qualifications at that time when that was done. So yeah, I'm very concerned about the height as well. It sounds to me like the height is really on the top floor, mostly to provide a little bit more space. I get it. But this is a unit that this whole building is for rental. And I'm thinking that we need to be careful about how we deal with that. And so I don't think I'm happy with that part. Go ahead, Councillor Chung.
Thank you. I think there's a few considerations to take into play. Most importantly, our abilities for fire suppression. But then this also sets the tone for the rest of potential future development, which could ultimately destroy the views of the street behind, I believe it's Nighthawk. Which I just don't see it being fair that we grant variance so that we have some more vaulted ceilings. But then the trade-off is now you have essentially 7 homes that have now just lost a crucial part of why they chose to live there, which is the view. At the same time, you have to balance kind of the NIMBYism with the fact that we want to create more housing stock. But my concerns are, I think the height is I think it's a bit of a stretch for this variance. But this is my comments.
Go ahead, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm be voting against this as well, because I think what we're doing is we're going ahead and wanting to okay this variance. And then that sets a tone for the future. And we've never sat down and said, we want to go 5 floors, it's like 4 floors. So basically somebody's telling council, we want to now in the future go 5 floors, not 4 floors. And we have the fire capabilities or funding to do that, fire truck to do that. Or no, I don't think we're there yet. I think we're going ahead of ourselves. So I'd be voting against it.
Councillor Puerto Rican and Councillor King.
Thank you, Richard. I guess the contrary, when the discussion over, 44 stories, 35 stories, I think that's kind of being decided for us as a community by the province at some point in the Shaker Report. It's coming, we do have to go up at some point. As for the fire response capability side of it, there are other ways. There is access, at least compared to some other developments we have seen, there is access at least from Nighthawk. There is some space around there that can be mitigated, obviously, as well as new home construction. I think we have to be, cognizant of the fact that, this is a project that also, it's the creation of 40 rental units, which is much needed in this community. I don't want to, have them in the situation where it's go, no go because of that height increase. I'm not even saying that that's the reason why but we've also, There's an area in that area well, we should expect to see some future development on, and that's probably gonna be the height that we're really looking at moving forward in that area, so I think that is keep that in council's mind.
Councillor King?
Thank you, Member. I guess the other question, we definitely need rental property in this town. So is there some stipulation if this got passed that a certain amount of those rentals would have to be, say, near term or lower than market rental?
So to my knowledge, there isn't a formal agreement in place to require that of the applicant, so ultimately they could move forward. And they could go with rentals, they could go with partial, or not.
The last time that we did pass this, I'm pretty sure that they agreed that they would be rental properties on this particular block. Does anybody remember that? Maybe it was before. No? I'm pretty sure that was, the planner at the time came back and said that the owner of this building said that they would be all rental units. And I'm sorry, I don't think we have that, but I'm concerned about giving this variance and not having these things checked, and I think we need to have a look at that. Maybe it's changed because the permit's lapsed and we have to start again, I don't know, but. Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Member. I guess before really saying no to this, there's an opportunity for staff to come back with a report because there is some history there, and I'm with the mayor here that I was on council at that time, and I remember too, I'm sure it was gonna be all rental. So I'd like some clarification on that before we make a final decision.
Are you making that motion?
Yeah.
Does that make sense,
Well-
Mr. Wisdom?
Your worship, and maybe planners want to deal with this, but your property owner saying they're gonna be building it for rentals, that can change. So I don't believe was ever an intent to put anything on title, so market conditions change, it could continue that way or it could not. So I think even if we went back to find out what the developer's intent was, that can change with market conditions, and so I don't know if how getting that would weigh into a decision, because markets change and so do the attitudes of investors.
Well, again, I'm not looking to create work, as I know we're short staffed, but again, I think it's important that we have all the information before we make a final decision. And that way, we're not necessarily saying no today, it just gives us a little more time to find out some information.
Any of the planners, either one want to speak to this? Can you? Go ahead, Chris.
Just generally speaking, I mean, we're happy if you council desires to defer this to allow us to come back with more information. You can certainly check the file. But again, our understanding generally is when there's these types of situations where there's a desire to see a structure used in a certain way, your opportunity to do that's at the rezoning stage. And if it's being secured as a rental unit, the first thing that we would look for coming to a file new is what's on title. And are there any restricted covenants or charges or something that relates to that desire by council that might have been previously expressed at the rezoning stage to have that used as a rental building. And so we can, that'll be our starting point. If council wants more information, see what's on title. If it speaks to the decision, we can certainly come back with that information. But the other point I was going to add too, just getting back to the question of what plans were considered previously by council versus what you're seeing today. And again, just generally speaking, it's not uncommon for people to put a concept forward at the zoning stage. But when it actually comes time to design that to meet the code requirements, changes do occur over time. So that might explain why what you saw before is maybe not exactly what you're seeing today.
I guess I can't go for it the same, with the having this today, because I do really remember that we went through this quite carefully. I even think that the developer came back and said, I'd like to change the number of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom units to make it easier for people to rent. That's, in my mind, what was the conversation when that happened. So I'm certainly in favor of having a look at what's on the title and just to see if there's anything more that we should be looking at. So Councillor King, you've made the motion.
Yes.
Is there a seconder for that motion? I'll second the motion. So we deal with this before we go on and deal with anything else, am I correct? So we will, I will ask for a motion's been made that we ask for more information before we move forward. All in favor? Against? Are you in favor? Okay, so that has passed, thank you. So could our planners have a look at that and come back with what was said and what wasn't? Thank you, I appreciate that. Go ahead, Councillor Chong.
Thank you. In addition with that information, can we get a bit more specifics on how much height is they wanted for the underground parking versus the rest of like the headroom and the vaulted ceilings? Because I can understand the handicap or the disability band being a necessity, but vaulted ceilings at the cost of the views of residents and longtime residents, that doesn't seem like a fair trade-off for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you include that in when you do your, have a look at things? Thank you very much. All right, next on our agenda is the separation of water, sewer and garbage user fees from the tax bill. So I will turn it over to Mr. Baffle. We forgot where we are? Yep. Go ahead, Mr. Baffle.
Thank you, Mayor McCordock. So utilities have been included in the town of Osu's property tax notices up until 2023. Consideration on separating out the user fees is now being considered. Rural utilities will continue to be billed through utility billing. To do the transition, what we're looking at is some software updates of about $3,920, plus about 3 weeks worth of staff time to get the accounts up to date and verified as correct. So for 2024, we're really pressing our timeline to get that done. Recommendation would be that we move forward to this transition for January 1st, 2025. And that council consider possibly semi-annual or quarterly billing with respect to the water, sewer, and garbage.
Thank you, Mr. Zankel. It seems to me that if we were to try and do it for 2024, we really only got about 3 weeks before the notices need to go out. So I'm thinking if we chose to do it that way, we might be stuck because we always know things take a little longer. And I'm sure it would take extra staff time. So appreciate your recommendation. Councillor King and Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I move on to number 2. We've discussed this quite a bit, you can see that the logic.
That council direct administration to make the transition to separate out water, sewer and garbage user fees in 2025.
Yes.
Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Is there anyone else that would like to look at Councillor Chong?
Thank you. Can it be physically done for 2024? Like, if it's not even a feasible option, then
It can be done. Oh, sorry. It can be done. However, timing of the first billings to go out might be a little bit later. Because like I said, it's going to take 3 weeks of staff time once we get the software transferred over and updated. That process is probably also going to take 2 to 3 weeks to get our software provider to do that for us. So we really be pushing the envelope to do that. We'd also have to change our water and sewer bill or bylaws to represent either quarterly, semi-annual billings as well. So there's still a little bit of work that will need to be involved. Our pre-authorized payment plans currently have been set up to include water, sewer, and garbage in those things. What we could do is the council decided on the 2025 as an example, when it came for the pre-authorized payment renewals, we would readjust those numbers for the taxpayer to the tax amount only. So Councilor Chung, it can be done. It just would be, I would think for the first payment, we'd probably be sent along in July.
I mean, I was thinking the same thing, and I was concerned that if it took 3 weeks to get the software and another 3 weeks based on having full staff dealing with it, that would be June, and, I think these tax notices normally go up before the end of May. Am I
Right,
correct?
third week of July, usually the end of the third week of July, or I mean.
Of May, yes. Yeah, that's what I thought. I do know that we've looked at other municipalities and I think sending it out quarterly, might be a good way to do it rather than, doing it, say, twice a year. I also think that, we are absolutely open to allowing people to pay, water and sewer and taxes at any time. They can come in to town hall and pay taxes at any time of the year, and it will go on to their statement. Am I correct?
That is correct as well. If the property owners are prepaying their taxes or prepaying their water and sewer, they're already 5.7% interest right now on their prepayment. So it's a decent rate of return.
Thank you. And the other thing is that if they choose to, people that are paying on a monthly basis, choose to change the amount that they pay, they can raise it or lower it and come in and do that as well. That is also an option.
That's correct.
Thank you. So, council, we've got option 2 on the floor? Yes, go ahead.
I guess that's to move it to 225 that gets passed, but this motion doesn't really include how often you're going to do it. So would that come back for another discussion? Thank you.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded that we go with option 2. I'll call a question, all in favor? Against? Thank you. That's carried. All right, next is the general net payroll and Sunville. Oh, it is. No, it's the museum bylaw, isn't it? I'm sorry, the Sunville, okay. Not sure what that is, thank you. So the net payroll for general cash requirements as of April 23rd is $615,627.93. Sunville cash requirements of $5,533.37 and net payroll accounts of $119,801.56. Could I have a motion, please, to accept those for information? Councillor Chung, Councillor Federico, all in favor? Thank you. Now we'll move on to the museum parcel tax amendment bylaw. Mr. Zackel.
Thank you, Member Cora. So before council's museum parcel tax amendment bylaw 1300.09. This is updating the 2024 parcel tax rate to $17.40. In 2023 it was $17.71. And then I'll pass this back to council for consideration for first readings.
Good. This is, referendum was held in 2011 and it was for 20 years?
That's correct for the purchase of the museum building.
Great. So, not only do the members of, Asuyas pay for this, but also the rural people pay. And, so we would have 7 more years of doing this, I think. All right, council, could we have a motion to that the museum parcel tax amendment bylaw be read a first, second, and third time, please? Councilor King.
I'll move up to.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councilor Chong. All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you. And Mr. Zacko, you're on again. The Asuyas tax rates bylaw.
Thank you, Member Cordova. So the city's tax rates bylaw 1396 is before council for consideration of first readings. The 2024 tax rates reflect the property taxes required within the 5-year financial plan, which was adopted by council on April 9th. The budget for municipal portion of tax requisitions are municipal $4,174,151, policing $1,247,106, general debt $30,500, Fire protection, $847,317. Fire all debt, $173,561. Town of Vesuvius is also responsible for collecting remaining taxes for other taxing authorities, which include the school. The 2023 requisition was $4,599,774, and we won't receive that updated amount until May 10th. The hospital is $587,592. RDUS is $1,125,951. Okanagan Regional Library, $312,825. BC Assessment Authority, $116,878. Municipal Finance Authority, $643. So when looking at the assessment changes for 2024, there was a disparity between the residential assessments actually went down by a very small percentage, and the business assessments went up fairly significantly. So what's being proposed in this tax rates bylaw is that the business multiple be reduced from 1.9 times down to 1.7 times to equalize out the tax distribution between classifications. As an example, looking at page 38, the 2024 taxes, if we were to maintain the 1.9% ratio, the residential average single family dwelling would have paid 25.59% as an increase, and the business would have paid a 42.59% increase. Reducing it down to 1.7% or 1.7 ratio gets the percentage increases in line with each other as close as we can get them to each other. So at this point in time, as well, when we're looking at the property taxes for 2024 for an average single family resident, will pay $3,305.18 as compared to 2023, which is $3,002.76, or 10.07% overall increase. Property tax rates also have to be adopted by May 14th as per section 187.1 of the community charter. And at this point in time, I'll pass it back to council for consideration of first readings.
Thank you. So in order to have this passed, which would be adopted, would have to be the first meeting. No, could be the
First meeting.
first meeting in May in order to accommodate the May 14th. So, Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want clarity on the other money we collect for hospital, RDUS and that. Are those actual all real numbers other than the school?
That's correct. The school is the only one that we do not have yet.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to point out that actually it's not the hospital we're collecting it for. It's the Okanagan-Similkameen Regional Hospital District. So that includes everybody in the district, including all hospital facilities and the regional hospital in Penticton. Thank you. Okay, council, that's your Councillor John. Okay.
I'll move option one.
Okay. And Councillor Federica seconding that we be read a first, second, and third time. Okay, I will call the question. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Zackel. Okay. We will go back to the agenda and we will ask for a report from the Chief Administrator's Officer, Mr. Risman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, been attending a few meetings out there in the regional human resources meeting, with the club general manager. Also met with the consultant with Destination Seas as they are working on the tourism master plan. And meeting with the CEOs of resort municipalities, always enjoy going to those. They're Zoom meetings about every 2 or 3 months. And a lot of similarities between municipalities, and we share ideas. And yeah, we're busy as far as administration, adjusting to the staff vacancies. We had another resignation last week. Helen McDonald, our superintendent of utilities, handed in their resignation. So we wish him all the best, but it's going to again leave more of a hole on the administration side, as it's indicated To council previously, it's extremely difficult to fill vacancies based on some of the things that are occurring in the community. From community services perspective, the Wine Country Racing Association agreement was finalized. Park signs are being installed throughout the community. Hopefully within the next week or two, the lettering will be installed on those, keeping our fingers crossed, but again, I think all the signs themselves have been installed. I know we're still waiting for the community boards. I think there's 3 or 4 of them that are being put throughout the community. I think those are still gonna be, I think 2 or 3 more weeks out, so. We're continuing to look at our inventories, it's indicate to council, we believe in transparency, and we had some consultants on in the community the last couple of weeks, and they've been looking at our buildings and our park systems, so we're doing an asset management plan on those, so hopefully within the next few weeks, we'll get a presentation from them to provide us with more information on the status of these assets. The road sign at Sun Bowl is pretty close to being functional and operating, so it is installed, but there's some training that needs to be done. So hopefully within a couple of weeks, that sign will be up and running. Within, we're also doing an accessibility ramp on the 2nd floor of the mezzanine Sun Bowl. That's only take a week to do, so starting April 29th, that's going to be occurring. And windscreens are going to be replaced at tennis courts over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And there's some crack repairs that are going to be done first part of May. Then planning development, we're getting a lot of changes occurring in that area, and we're being a lot more transparent with our building permits, etc. So there's a lot of updates on our website to include development permits and where they're at. As far as new businesses in the community, we've got a few here. Easy Go Plumbing and Heating, Unified Plumbing and Heating, Pump Jacks, Acres Trucking, Precision Stucco, Gravity Excavation, and Sharp Farms Corporation. Within operational services, again, they're changing the season, so they're getting a lot of work done for the summer. We're gonna start with some more hydrant labeling for the next month. Well 8 was taken offline to allow the well to excuse me, to recharge. Probably noticed over the last couple of weeks, there's been some line painting, so that is now completed. And the community and event pole banners installed over the last little bit. So there's a few changes that people will be witnessing and will continue over the next few weeks. That's my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Risling. Could we have a motion, please, to receive the CO report for information? Councillor Chong, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. Thank you. Now, council reports, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a report, but I just want to do a quick thank you to the people that are doing all the work on the Pioneer Walkway. When I drive by there, and they're out there yesterday, and it's windy and cold, and I know a lot of the people in the stands go by, and the people who go by just give them a big thank you, because I'm sure they appreciate it, because they're volunteers and they do a wonderful job. That's my report.
Thank you, absolutely great. Councillor Chong.
Thank you. I don't have much to report, but we will be as a group attending SILGA, so Southern Interior Local Government Association Convention. Which is going to be a fantastic opportunity for us to engage with higher levels of government, because we will need as much help as possible over the next few years. So we are putting those opportunities in place so that we can advocate for this community, and so that we can grow in the correct and right direction. But that basically concludes my report.
Thank you. Councillor Potterica.
Thank you, Your Worship. My report, as Councillor Chong has mentioned, we are off to SILGA next week for a busy 4 days up in the valley. Good time to, of course, meet with our council colleagues up down the valley, as well as local governments, as well as trade organizations. So overall, looking forward to a busy week. Of course, council will be speaking towards its resolution on that is to report to SILGA as well as to UBC later this year, and look forward to continued discussion on that resolution that's been put forward. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Kind of exciting last week, met on a Zoom meeting with Parks and Rec and Mr. Davis, Director from Community Services. to go over what our next steps would be in trying to put a MOU together, identifying potential sponsors or funding sources, and identifying other partners we want to bring to the table besides OYB and ourselves, which we're talking about fisheries and forestry joining the committee. So kind of excited about that. And then it went on to meet with accessibility committee. And there the update was mainly a trailer's been ordered to move the equipment around for people with disabilities that they want to borrow the tractor or the piece of equipment that go in the lake where the person say in a wheelchair can go in onto it and then just travel all around the lake. So that's also quite exciting and identified. Moby mats are put out now, summertime. We've also identified, they can actually be left out all year round, if they're not. But people really want to go down to the water in the winter, so that's exciting. That's my report.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I want to say that yesterday was Earth Day, and I'm hoping that everybody either biked to work or walked to work, and I'm not sure that happened because I had to actually drive downtown, so I couldn't walk. But just want to remember that Earth Day is a day when we try and pay attention to what's going on in the earth and do our best to try and maintain it. There's lots of activities that can be done. Most of my reporting is on water issues, and this would be mostly water up and down the valley, not necessarily potable water for the town. I was on a meeting with Okanagan Water Supply, one community, one water, one valley, and they talked about the fellow on with the IJC, International Lake Osoyoos Board of Control, Dave Hutchison. He talked about the fact that the drought criteria has been met for Lake Osoyoos. And there's quite a good article in the Osoyoos Times this week that Dave Kumka, who is a fisheries expert, talked to the reporter and gave a really good explanation of why the lake is a little higher. And that's partly so that because we think freshet has happened, we don't see any more water up in the hills and snow melting. So they're trying to keep Osoyoos Lake a little bit higher right now because we know that during the warm weather that it will go down a bit. So that's why you will see that the lake level, people say, well, it's too high. It's not really, it's just sort of to protect us, because if it was at the regular level, it could go down too far, and then that would cause problems with people's intake and their pipes and their docks and so on. So that was an interesting one. Jonathan Boyd, who's with the River Forecast Center, said that overall in the province, we're about 73% of normal for April the 1st in terms of water, and that the melt, if there is much left, and there has been snow in a few areas, it's about 3 to 4 weeks early. And I can remember the last couple of, I think 2017, 2018, when we had floods, they happened about the second week in May. So if there is any more water coming in, it'll probably happen between now and the end of April. I was also on another ETSI-BC, Economic Trust of the Southern Interior, on a forest impact recovery. And that was a very interesting Zoom meeting to be on. The government has provided some money to ETSI-BC to help with forest impact recovery. And while we don't have a lot of forests right here in Osoyoos, over the hill in Rock Creek, they certainly do. And Dan McMaster, who's the forest manager for Osoyoos Indian Band, had some really interesting things that he was talking about. What they're trying to do is not just clear cut the forests, but rather cut salvage logging and cut some trees in order to clear out the undergrowth and plant more, and not only planting the right type of trees, and they have quite a long list, but also planting shrubs, such as Saskatoon berry, willows, alder, those kinds of things. There's also an outdoor education center which allows kids apparently from Esuias over to Grand Forks to attend. And I think it's in Rock Creek, and they're looking at educating people on the use of the forest, and all of this helps, of course, with the fire mitigation that we're obviously going to be looking at, because we have several fires already in the province. And one of the things that Dan did say was that not only are they working together and training people to look after things, do not clear cut, and also the protection of wildlife and water are really important things that they think of all the time. So at the regional district meeting, which I've been at a couple of those, water systems and fire concerns are high on the list of things that we're looking at. And of course, the International Lake Esuias Board of Control on drought. And then tomorrow I'm at an Okanagan Lake Watershed Collaborative Leadership Table in Vernon with all of a lot of the Indian bands and mayors from up and down the valley. So that should be interesting. And the Okanagan Basin Water Board has a new guide that they put out, and it's called, and I'll get one for the town, Preparing for Invasive Mussels, Vulnerability Assessment Guide for Raw Water Infrastructure. And it's something that we all need to be really careful of, because if we get zebra quagga mussels in here, we need to know what to do, how to do it, and how to prevent it from passing on. So I will get a guide for that. And the last thing last weekend was the Oyster Festival in Esuias, and I know that they had a couple of events on. One of them was a gala at Walnut Beach, and I was at the shorter one that was up at the golf course. And there was wineries there that were providing sips of their wine, and Codfathers had lots and lots of oysters, plus the golf club had lots of hors d'oeuvres and things too. It was a very nice event, and there was no limit to the number of oysters you could have, which was pretty amazing. I mean, I think I had maybe 10, but there was a fellow sitting across the table from me. I bet he had 50 empty shells in his plate. So it was really nicely done. And when I asked, I said, do you not have a limit on the number of oysters? And she said, no, not tonight. So that was a really nice thing. It was very well handled, and a nice event and a good day. So I think that's all that I have for today. So thank you, and I will look for a termination of the meeting. Thank you, Councillor King, Councillor Butterica, all in favor. Thank you, everyone.